I bet you've heard all sorts of advice when it comes to planning for college, right?
Oh, yeah.
It can feel like everyone's got an opinion.
Yeah, it really can be overwhelming.
So today we are taking a deep dive using some really solid info from diversified college planners
Okay.
to bust some of the biggest myths out there
Makes sense.
about admissions and financial aid.
Yeah, these are the ones that trip people up
These are the things that can really cost you big time
and cause a lot of stress.
if you're not careful. So
Exactly. So let's clear some of that up.
yeah, let's get rid of some of that fog.
All right.
One of the biggest ones I hear all the time
Okay.
is that, oh, well, we make too much money,
Uh-huh.
so there's no point in even applying for financial aid.
Oh, I hear that one a lot, and it's not true.
I know, it's so common.
It really is a very persistent myth,
It is.
and it's costing a lot of high-income families money.
Wow.
The reality is that you can still qualify for aid.
Really?
Yeah. You know, it all boils down to understanding this thing called the Student Aid Index,
Okay.
the SAI,
The SAI got it.
and knowing the ways to potentially lower it
Okay.
through some smart planning.
So it's not just about your income, it's about how you approach it.
Exactly. It's about understanding how the system works.
Right.
Not about trying to, game the system or anything.
Yeah, no tricks, just smart planning.
Right.
Okay, so what about middle-class families then?
Uh-huh.
Because, I often hear that they feel kind of squeezed.
Right. They're not poor enough for a lot of need-based aid,
Yeah.
but they're not wealthy enough to, just write a check.
Yeah, they're definitely feeling the pinch.
Yeah, absolutely. And that feeling is valid.
Okay.
And, Diversified College Planners actually points out that middle-class families
Okay.
are often the most likely to overpay for college.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's because they often assume they won't qualify for any aid,
right.
so they don't plan strategically.
Yeah, they're not thinking ahead.
But with the right approach, they can absolutely access both merit-based and need-based aid.
So again, it's about being smart about it.
Absolutely being informed and proactive.
Okay, so it's not just about how much money you have, it's about the strategy.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about grades then.
Okay.
What if you weren't a straight A student?
Mm-hmm.
Is college, out of reach? Are the good schools just off the table?
Not at all.
Really?
Yeah. While academics are important,
Mm-hmm.
colleges look at a much broader picture these days.
They do.
Yeah, they consider, how hard your classes were,
Oh, okay.
your involvement in things outside the classroom.
Right, extracurriculars.
Exactly. And even how compelling your essays are.
Oh, wow. So it's really about the whole package.
Yeah, it's a holistic evaluation, not just about GPA.
That's good to know because I think a lot of students get hung up on that.
I know, it can be a lot of pressure.
All right, so let's talk about homeownership
Okay.
because for many people, their home is their biggest asset.
Right.
So does owning a home automatically disqualify you from getting financial aid?
That's a good question.
It's a big one.
And it's not a simple yes or no answer.
Oh, really?
It depends.
Okay.
So for the FFSA,
Uh-huh, the main federal aid application.
exactly, for that one, your home equity isn't counted as an asset.
Okay, so that's good.
It is good, but many private colleges use something called the CSS profile.
Oh.
And that one does factor in home equity.
Oh, so it really depends on what schools you're looking at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about private colleges, you definitely need to plan ahead.
Right, and understand how that works.
Absolutely.
This is all starting to sound pretty complicated.
Yeah, it can be.
And I think a lot of people assume that the college application process is pretty simple.
Right. Like you just fill out some forms and you're done.
Right, follow the steps.
If only it were that easy.
Right.
Diversified College Planners really emphasizes that going it alone can be overwhelming.
I bet.
Between the admissions requirements,
Mm-hmm.
those essays we talked about,
Yeah.
the different financial aid forms,
Yeah.
and then figuring out payment plans, it's a lot.
Yeah. That's a lot to juggle.
It is, and expert guidance can make a huge difference.
Okay, so speaking of financial aid, let's talk about merit scholarships.
Okay?
Because a lot of people think that those are only for the absolute top students.
Right, the valedictorians and the star athletes.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's another misconception.
It is.
It is. While there are definitely scholarships for those top performers, a lot of merit aid goes to students who are, in the top 25% of the applicant pool.
Oh, wow. That's a much bigger group.
Exactly. So the key is to be strategic about where you apply.
Okay, so you're saying find the right fit for your student.
Exactly. Find the schools where their strengths will stand out.
Right, find your pond.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the FSS a couple of times now.
Right.
And Diversified College Planners really highlights the fact that even when families do complete it, they often make mistakes.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's really common.
So can you give us an example of a common error that can really trip people up?
Sure, one that comes up a lot is with 529 college savings accounts.
Okay.
So families have this account,
Right.
and they mistakenly list it as an asset for both the parent and the student on the FSA.
Oh, so they're double counting it.
Exactly, and that inflates their SAI.
And that hurts them.
Yeah, and that can really reduce the amount of aid they qualify for.
Wow. So it's a small detail.
Yeah.
It could have a huge impact.
Absolutely, it can cost you thousands.
Wow. So the core message here is that you really got to understand the realities behind these college planning myths.
Yeah.
If you want to make the most of financial aid and not spend more than you have to.
Precisely, knowledge is power in this process.
It really is.
And for you listening, recognizing these myths is the first step towards a much more informed approach.
So now that we've busted some of these big myths, what questions does this raise for your own college planning journey?
That's something to think about.
That is your food for thought. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for diving in with us.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.